When your home is damaged by storms and high winds, you need more than a contractor. You need a consultant, advisor, and partner. Hi, I'm Eric Thomason, owner of Blue Nail Roofing. For over a decade, Blue Nail has been serving North Texas families and businesses. We're ready to restore your property with 100% satisfaction and for the amount of your insurance estimate. So call us today and make your next roof Blue Nail strong.
You're watching the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, sponsored by Blue Nail Roofing.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special edition of the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. And while this day is nowhere near as stunning as February 2nd, 2025, on that Saturday night when we were all stunned with that trade news about Luka Doncic, we do have breaking news from the Dallas Mavericks on this evening. On this Tuesday evening, Jason Kidd out as Mavs head coach. We want to run through it for you. And yours truly, Joe Trahan here, along with our main anchor here, WFAA, who is also a big-time sports fan and he knows his stuff, Chris Lawrence, with us. We've also got super producer Andrew Seeley, and we've also got Jonah Javad joining us remotely. Jonah, our resident hoop head, as I like to call my man Jonah. So, you guys, I do want to dive in, but first things first, I do want to give the team their due in terms of how they couched this decision. It has been called a mutual parting of the ways, and I want to read you the statement and the words that were given by Mavericks' new team president of basketball operations, Masai Ujiri. And Masai said, "As we evaluate the future of our basketball team, we believe this is the right moment for a new direction for our team. We have high expectations for this franchise and a responsibility to build a basketball organization capable of sustained championship contention. We will conduct a thorough, disciplined search for our next head coach and continue to evaluate our entire basketball operations staff to ensure we compete at the standard Mavs fans expect and deserve." All right, so that's how the team couches it. Now let's kind of dive into what we feel about it. And let's start with the reaction. And Chris, I'll start with you because I know you're a big NBA fan and you follow it closely. When you first heard about it, what was your immediate thought?
Not all that surprised, especially when you consider Masai Ujiri just took over as team president. So he's built a winner before. He reshaped the Toronto Raptors franchise. He brought in Nick Nurse as his coach and shaped that team in his image. And I would imagine just with so much upheaval, trading Luka Doncic, trading Anthony Davis, the team had already sort of hit a reset button. And I'm just thinking he came in and said, you know, there's a different vision I want to have if I'm going to rebuild the team around Cooper Flagg.
And I think it's a good point. And I think you also, Maverick fans, have to think about the fact that if you look at ownership and the way that they are handling this team as a whole right now, is this another move to try and create Mavs 2.0 under Patrick Dumont, under the Adelson family? Is this the second iteration? Is this a matter of saying, listen, that was a false start? We had issues at the beginning of our tenure as owners of this team. So does Kidd become another person who was involved with the trade of Luka Doncic? We don't really know to how much extent. I will say that. But is this the way of the Mavericks saying, listen, this is, and Ujiri said it himself, it's the right time to continue to remake this basketball organization. And it almost feels like, you know what, let's just clean sweep it, and this will be Mavericks 2.0 under Patrick Dumont and company. Jonah, what's your take?
I think it's probably a little bit of all of that, right? I mean, it's a chance for this new Mavs front office to really stamp like this is going to be our group. This is our new regime, and we're going to start it from day one. And I think a lot of teams across all sports sometimes get themselves in a pickle when they bring in a new GM or, new people that are, big time in the front office, and they don't necessarily change the coach. And so they're sort of stuck with somebody from the past, and then they get tied to them. And it allows for more of a total clean slate for a team. And that if you're going to judge Masai Ujiri and if you're going to judge Mike Schmitz on the success or lack of success that they have with the Mavericks, that the nucleus that they've built in a month moving forward, that they're going to be judged entirely based off that, and no one from the previous Mavs front office and members that were possibly involved in the Luka trade, whether or not Kidd truly did have any responsibility in that, regardless of that. So I think there's a lot of benefit to just having a fresh start entirely and not, doing any sort of retread with a new front office. And then obviously there is the bonus of if Kidd was involved, whether he was involved or not. I think a lot of fans are never going to really believe him if he says he's not or if he wasn't. And so they now can start to fully heal. Listen, they're not going to change ownership. The Dumonts aren't going anywhere. And so the closest you can get to a full fresh start post-Luka trade is to change up the GM, president of basketball ops, and head coach, and they've done that.
The other thing I think sticks out is a report from Tim McMahon right before Masai was hired was that Kidd wanted to be involved with the team presidency and that operation. That's nothing new for Kidd. He's been wanting to get more control with every franchise he's been a part of. It's the same concept that Bill Parcells talked about. You want to buy the groceries if you're going to have to work with them. So it's not like that's a foreign concept and coaches never want to do that. But it is saying something when you bring in a brand new regime and you have someone that wanted that power. Even if there's a slim chance that can cause friction in a franchise that wants to really restart things, it's better to just cut bait and find a new voice to lead the team.
And listen, they said it was a mutual parting of the ways, and perhaps that's part of it, right? Kids like, listen, this is Masai's vision, and if it's going to be his vision, I need to go on about my NBA journey,
right?
And find my next stop, and find out where I can put my stamp on it, and do things my way. And listen, before we go any further, I want to make sure we make this point crystal clear, because I feel like Jason Kidd as a head coach was not always treated fairly, because Jason goes about doing things differently than a lot of coaches, right? And I think we cannot overlook the fact that Jason Kidd got this team to an NBA Finals when no one expected they would. That playoff run, orchestrated by Jason, started without Luka Doncic, by the way, with Jalen Brunson leading the way, was a fantastic coaching job. So I know there are a lot of people who have a lot of qualms with Jason Kidd, but I tend to be a bottom line guy, right? And when he can get you in that arena, when he can get you to conference championships, I won't bring up the Cowboys right now, but when he can get you, or will I? But when he can get you to that level, I respect what he did. He didn't always do it in a popular or way that a lot of people agreed with, but I respect what he did. And the other thing is, Jason Kidd's a champion. I was at that championship parade. I was at all those games. So wherever Jason goes, I do think that for those who were, and there are a lot of them, naysayers of Jason Kidd, here's hoping that there is, at least when the epitaph is written, some fairness in terms of some of the things that Jason Kidd was able to do with this franchise. All right, my rant's over. Chris, but I wanted to make sure I got that out there early.
And I mean, just to piggyback on that, Joe, I mean, he was brought in, 5 years ago. He got the team to the Western Conference Finals in his very first season. Followed that up a couple years later with a trip to the finals. I would say most coaches would consider that a pretty successful run. Obviously, the end sort of derailed or went way off course with the Luka trade and all that. But I mean, when you look back at his tenure with the Mavs, I mean, Andrew, this guy's a Hall of Fame lock. And he's going to go down as one of the great Mavericks of all time. I mean, drafted by the team, comes back later in his career to be a key piece on its only championship run. Then comes back as a coach and gets the team back to the finals. That's a pretty impressive resume with one team.
And it's impressive given the injury history that he had to deal with through the majority of his tenure. And I think it's kind of poetic to some degree that his final record overall with the Mavs as a head coach is 205 and 205. Because it always kind of felt like 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. You're going to go to the finals, but the next year everyone's going to be injury riddled, and you're going to try and find some magic in a trade midway through that was a debacle. But that felt like par for the course. He was a great elevator. The problem was they just couldn't physically get over the hump with the group that they had, and a lot of that was just how the ball bounced, and a lot of it was the injury luck. Jonah, I'm curious, when you think of contextualizing Kidd's tenure, what's going to stick out to you most moving forward?
I thought he got just dealt a really tough hand his last year and a half. I mean, do you know how hard that is to build an entire team around a superstar, like perhaps the best offensive player in the NBA, and your whole supporting cast is catered around this one guy? Your whole offensive system is catered around this dude, and then you trade him, and then it's basically good luck with what we just gave you. Make the best of it. Turn lemons into lemonade, and then the following year you're having to coach an 18-year-old in the NBA without your co-superstar in Kyrie Irving. The other cast of characters are all dealing with injuries or are starting to show some age and wear. And it's like, what did you expect, from Kidd this year? I mean, I thought by and large, like the Mavericks did about what we expected them to do, and I didn't really hold much of that against Kidd. If anything, I thought they won more games than they probably should have this year, especially down the stretch. I mean, there were a few games that they probably should have lost and could have. Like looking back now after the NBA draft lottery, man, it would have been really nice had they lost those games and maybe landed somewhere in the top 7 picks instead of at 9. And so, I know that Jason Kidd wasn't a perfect coach, at least to some Mavs fans, but it felt like he accomplished a lot and exceeded expectations in some moments. And where they didn't, it wasn't necessarily a coaching issue. It was a roster issue, and that's not really his fault. So, I wish him the best. But I think, for the sake of a fresh start, this is not a bad thing for the Mavs organization.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, to kind of wrap it up with, Jonah, because as much as I would say, Jason did on multiple occasions get as much or more out of this team than you could want, maybe this is a good time, okay, we're going to re-rack everything. We're going to start over. And as a Mavericks franchise, they've got to try and get back to a standard that has been set and that Mavs fans have been accustomed to, and they deserve it because they've been great fans, and they especially deserve it after what they had to go through with the Luka trade. So the good news for Mavs fans, and I was talking about this on the 630 show earlier, under Patrick Dumont, when they have had to make big-time decisions in terms of the front office, when you talk about a Rick Welts as CEO, who is as respected in the NBA as anyone on the planet, I'll start there. Great hire. And then working with Welts in concert to try and get a Masai Ujiri, who he doesn't have to come up with his plan. He doesn't have to create a championship dossier on how, okay, this is how we want to do it. No. He's done it. He's been there. He's done it. Demonstrated ability. I'll bring up Parcells again. You can't beat that in terms of sports. He's demonstrated that ability, and he brings that to the table, right? So another great hire. And then Ujiri doubles down. He gets an analytical guy to kind of pair with his knowledge and ethos and all that great gravitas he brings to the game. Ujiri does. Right? He brings the perfect complement for him to try and run that front office. And so now we'll see what the Mavericks can do in terms of trying to make another championship hire in terms of a head coach. And I am interested to see, because Rick Welts, championship, Masai, championship, right? What coach is he going to be looking for? What coach is he going to land on that's got championship experience? And as you're saying, Jonah, making the point that this could be the right time, I suspect that with the leadership that they have in that front office now, they very well will land on a fantastic coaching choice, and that will be good.
And there's some good names available, and again, they could go a bunch of different directions here, and that will, you kind of have to look at through the prism of what is their plan. Like, are they on a 2-year plan, a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan? If they're trying to win next year, then you're probably going to want somebody who's climbed the mountain or come really close. But if you are kind of giving this a 3 to 5 year leash, then maybe you can roll the dice on, more of an unknown. Maybe you look at the college ranks and see if there's somebody that might suit your system and what you're trying to accomplish. But, there are a bunch of assistants in the NBA right now that would love to get back into a head coaching job. Even the Mavs staff. I mean, Frank Vogel's right there. And there's I wonder if Jeff Van Gundy would want to come back. Tom Thibodeau, Terry Stotts. I mean, there's guys, whether they're assistants or they've been out of the head coaching job for a little bit. Mike Budenholzer. I thought Bud was like one of the best coaches in the league maybe 5 years ago. And then he's just kind of, out. It's just
old Milwaukee coach is coming to Dallas, huh?
I don't know. And they've got options. And the best part about it, from a Mavs front office standpoint, from a Mavs player and fan standpoint, is they are alluring. They are not somewhere that coaches are going to want to come here. They're going to want – you kidding me? I get to ride Cooper Flagg's coattails for the next 10-plus years? Absolutely, sign me up. Now, if they didn't have Cooper Flagg, they would probably have to sell this job a whole lot harder. But it's a lot easier when you have a 19-year-old superstar, you have another veteran superstar in Kyrie, and you got some good pieces. They got to nail the draft pick, obviously. But it's an appealing job to coaches or candidates. And from that standpoint, I think they're going to be able to kind of, in theory, pick. They're not going to have to settle. They can pick the best option.
And Jonah, I'll just ask. I mean, if you watched that Spurs game last night, there ain't no winning next year or the year after. They need to be thinking about what this team's going to look like when Cooper Flagg's 25, 26 years old, because I just don't see this as any sort of quick turnaround. But that's the you sort of touched on this. That's the great, amazing gift of having a franchise player who's 19 years old. You can afford to take the long road. You can afford to bring in a coach who can bring him along and maybe add to his skill set. I know Giannis has credited Jason Kidd for helping his development when Kidd was in Milwaukee. So not to say that Jason Kidd couldn't have done that, but I think obviously you're going to want a coach to come in who can really work with Cooper Flagg and get all that's possible out of him.
Joe brought up the experience in terms of the names that have been added to the organization a lot. It's felt very corporate in that there are a lot of experienced guys entering the boardroom, and a lot of voices that will respect each other, right? Like, you want that kind of cohesive unit that it won't just be one guy going off and doing their own thing.
When would that ever happen,
I know,
Andrew?
Great question. But it is striking to me, though, that recently they did buck that trend with the GM in Mike Schmitz. They did go off book and find the guy that was the fast riser, and they're going to take a risk on him while still relying on the experience in the upper management position. So does the head coach, which umbrella does that fall under? Is there a rising head coach that they might want to throw an olive branch to and bring him under the fold? That's kind of the question.
It's a good point. And listen, you mentioned the kind of respect that you have amongst that group now. That respect is forged with championships.
Yes.
Right? And listen, you make a great point with Mike Schmitz, but he is, while he has the GM title,
right,
he is still squarely under Masai.
Yeah.
Right? And it's an interesting way to do it. I think it was absolutely fair to Schmitz because he's put in the work. And he deserves the move, and I think the Mavericks will see the fruits of that labor very quickly in terms of the way they go about things analytically and the way that they look in the international market.
Right.
But I do still think that is part of Masai and what he brings to that table. So It's interesting, right? Because there are, like Jonah said, there's a ton of candidates. I mean, even a guy like Sean Sweeney, who is with the Spurs, do you and has been around the Mavericks and a lot of winning, and you kind of pull from that to try and pull that curtain back. I mean, listen, all's fair in love and basketball.
There's history in the NBA recently. The Timberwolves saw what Denver was building, went and got their guy, and they've beaten Denver in the playoffs two of the last 3 years. So that fair is fair in the NBA.
Yep,
no doubt.
Can I bring up something that you guys might groan about, but it might be fun?
No, you can't bring it up. No, go ahead.
Not allowed on this show. Who would best attract Luka Doncic in 2020?
Oh my God!
Oh my gosh,
Jonah!
I had to set it up. I had to give the pregnant pause. I had to give the 9-month pause right there.
Jonah's that guy on the dock. The cruise ship is out to sea, and he's still on the dock, waving his hand, saying, "Come back, come back."
Luka,
I was just kidding, but I'm glad I said no now. I was just messing with you.
All right, so I'm joking, but I think there are a lot of Mavs fans out there that are still holding out hope that Luka could return one day. And what day that is, if it's in 2028 or 2038, I don't know. But there are some that would love to just kind of, fantasize about him not only returning, but teaming up with Cooper Flagg. Like, that could be showtime. It would be amazing. But if that is to ever happen, you would need to have an attractive head coach situation, maybe somebody he knows, maybe somebody he's comfortable with. And the Lakers have an assistant that he's been around for years in Greg St. Jean, who I think is reportedly getting interest from the Portland Trail Blazers. He was with the Mavericks, went to the Lakers. So he's been around Luka for a handful of years now. This is just speculation, but I wonder if they give him a look, and if so, does that become more attractive to Luka ever coming back here? I'm getting way ahead of myself. I think I'm in too many Mavs fans.
The long game is real.
You said it, but I will say this. Jonah is not only our resident hoop head, as I like to say. He's also, like, when it comes to music, right? He's got a fantastic catalog that he can come up with instantly. So here's what I need you to do, Jonah. I need you to go get some classic Hall & Oates. Cue up some classic Hall & Oates. I want you to play She's Gone over and over again, okay? And then you'll be where you need to go. Got to learn how to replace her, okay? She's gone. She's gone.
Yeah. I'm going to say something.
What's that Charlie Puth song from Fast and Furious?
That one too.
Yeah, this is a little off topic, but I'm going to say something crazy. Somebody proposes a direct swap. Cooper Flagg for Luka Doncic. The Lakers say yes in a heartbeat. I don't think Dallas does.
I agree.
And I would imagine 29 GMs in this league would not trade Cooper Flagg for Luka Doncic.
The runway's too long.
Would you trade? But would you now imagine back to when Luka was 19? Would you rather have Luka 19 or Cooper 19?
Well, yeah, but he's not.
Right. That's the difference in the argument.
Okay, so your hypothetical is merely rooted in age, right?
Right.
Well, and experience.
And that's the current state of the NBA. We can't go back and de-age Luka and bring him back to 19.
Well, we pulled the curtain back too.
Yeah.
I mean, we know a little bit more now.
Right.
Right. And we'll see. I mean, that him getting hurt this year, it's not his fault, but he got hurt.
Yeah.
What was the fear? What was the biggest fear? That he'd get hurt.
And I do think the versatility of Cooper Flagg's game is going to make it so much easier on this next coach.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you need to design a certain scheme for Cooper Flagg. I think he can sort of take different tools out of that toolbox where need be. Jonah, Andrew, you guys probably know this better than I do. You've seen so much more of them.
Yeah, Jonah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, he's malleable, right? Like his game translates to multiple systems. Like he is not I need to have a 60% usage rate to change and dictate the game. He can work off ball, he can work on ball, as we saw this year as his rookie season developed. And I think that's part of the exciting nature of this is a coach coming in, it's not of, okay, I come in and I'm playing second fiddle to Luka's decisions and what Luka needs. I'm coming here to, create my own system, and I just have a superstar that's able to fit it. And maybe I shouldn't say superstar for Cooper Flag. He might not be there yet, but when you're dropping 40, 50 burgers as a rookie in the NBA, we're not far off. So
No, but budding, absolutely.
yeah, but that is definitely part of the enticing, reason of why a coach would want to come here is you're not going to have to kind of, fit one player. You're going to be able to kind of, you got options, and that's exciting.
And there's also kind of a macro argument across the NBA on guys like Luka, not necessarily putting him down, but Luka, James Harden, these guys that are ball dominant. You go in here too, Joe?
Absolutely.
Okay, but
Absolutely.
that's the question. It's like offenses that are more versatile can show you different looks, or that guy's going to have the ball for 80% of the time and find kick out guys. It can work, but it has not shown consistently to be successful in the playoffs, and that's kind of the question.
And here's the point I was going to make about it, because I am yearning for the beautiful game to come back in basketball.
Yeah.
Right? When you think about what we have to watch from Oklahoma City, and Andrew and I had this conversation the other day, it's how the game has evolved.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's what we have to watch, and there have been market inefficiencies that we have seen SGA be able to absolutely exploit. Right? And it is so hard to watch. I yearn for the beautiful game to come back. And the thing about Cooper Flag, he's a straight up hooper. He's just a hooper, right? And it doesn't have to be iso ball. It doesn't have to be pounding the rock until you can step back and get your shot or get past the guy and get fouled. It doesn't have to be those two outcomes that we have to watch far too often. His skill set is varied. There are so many different things that he can do on both ends of the floor, by the way, that will make him attractive for coaches. And it'll be cool to watch to see what kind of offense that is orchestrated, created, and how it evolves with him being able to do those different roles. Because, again, going back to the thread that kid caught fire at times, he caught fire when he made Cooper Flag play point at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
But then we saw it play out at the end when there were big games, high stakes, and Cooper took the ball and did it on his own, right? When he didn't necessarily have a really good set of players around him because of injury or however things happened and trade and all the other stuff, right? So I can't wait to see it. I think it's going to be intriguing, but it starts with the fact that Cooper Flag, straight up hooper.
Yeah.
You guys know a lot more about this than I do, but do you think that Cooper Flag is brought in on the decision-making process for the new coach, or is he just not earned that right being so
It's a little early,
on?
but I think they know enough about his tendencies that they're going to lean toward his strengths. They're not going to, we were bringing up, hey, if you're going to try and bring Luka back, they're not going to throw Tom Thibodeau out there and say, hey, let's play hardcore defense, right? You know what you're kind of getting, but you also know what kind of player that, at least to some degree, if Ujiri's taking the job, he has a vision for Cooper and what his game's going to develop into. So that's going to inform it as much as asking Cooper's opinion. But I also don't think, and Joe, maybe correct me if I'm wrong because you've talked with him a lot more than I have, he doesn't seem like he's quite ready. He's ready to dominate on the court, but he's still stepping into that leadership role.
He's stepping into it. He's embracing the leadership role, in terms of dealing with his teammates. In fact, I was having a conversation today with some Mavs front office people about that very thing and how he took great strides in terms of the way he embraces his leadership role around the people that he plays with. He's trusted in terms of being face of the franchise, and they know that this guy has all the intangibles that you need, and that only begins with the competitive fire that it takes to be the face of the franchise. But when it comes to the off-the-court things, handling the press the right way, all the various and sundries that you have to deal with when you are that guy, when you are him, so to speak, they know he has it. And because that's the case, I would hope that it would be a situation where they say, hey, listen, we've got this bullpen of candidates, how many ever it ends up being, 3 or 4, and we just want to, hey, here's some potentials, and once we get closer on one, just give them a hat tip and let them know. Here's what's going on. Here's who we may end up with. As far as having him come in on the decision-making process, I would just say this. Masai Ujiri has so much cachet in the NBA. It may just not be needed, right? And Masai understands well and good the type of player that Cooper Flagg is, and they may not need to do it. And I would think maybe it's, once they get the process down to the end, they would just say Cooper, hey, listen, this is who we're thinking and why we're thinking it, and go from there.
Jonah, would you trust the franchise to a 19-year-old?
No, I mean, yeah, I mean he's 19, man, and he's like a baby 19. So I just don't think he's had enough experience in the NBA to really have an opinion on a coach that should dictate who they hire, right? Like a lot of his probably knowledge of coaches is, word of mouth and through the grapevine, but until you're actually in the league for long enough and you understand coaching tendencies and who's from which lineage, unless he's just an historian of the game, then I don't know if that's necessarily his, realm of expertise. There's a reason you hire a GM. There's a reason you hire, a head of basketball operations. They're the guys with the connections. They're the guys with the relationships, the guys who have been in the league for 10, 20 years, that have been around these circles, that know the people, that know the right men for the job, rather than just a guy who's going based on vibes because, he's a really good player. So, yeah, I wouldn't. But if this is, let's say, 5 years from now and whoever their head coach is not working, then yeah, sure. Because by that point, we're talking about a max contract player. But right now, no.
And here's a way to illuminate that point, that he is kind of a young 19-year-old. I was talking with Mavs play-by-play voice Mark Followell about this. Think about Cooper's journey, right? He reclassified when he was in high school, and he was named Gatorade Player of the Year when he should have been a junior. Then he goes to Duke, and he wins Collegiate Player of the Year when he should have been a senior. And then he comes to the NBA and wins Rookie of the Year when he still could have been in college, right? Wow. First guy to do that, right?
Yeah.
But again, he's ahead of the curve, and it only underscores the fact that he is a young 19. As accomplished as he is, he's still young, and those things are all positives and all great for the Mavs fan base as well as whoever ends up being the coach, because this guy can go. And, let's talk draft now, you guys, because the 9th pick, trying to figure out who the coach is in terms of how they will look at the draft, right? Because that's another layer of, you got to figure all this out as you go. You got to have a plan in terms of how it will all work out. You don't want this thing to be one person deciding things that they believe in, I won't say on the fly, but seemingly on the fly.
Sure.
So,
and just to give the rough timeline here, May 19th today, they've made the decision already, so you're already on the 20th.
Yes.
June 23rd they pick.
Yep.
So it's a little over a month.
Yeah.
And that's a fairly short time frame to figure out the direction from a head coach perspective.
Yeah. But you got to think, when they made this move, they
Yes,
already
exactly.
had a couple, maybe 2 to 3 candidates in. Yeah.
I would be shocked if they don't already know who it is.
Right.
Yeah.
I would. I mean, this is a type of move where
you got to know who
Go ahead,
you want,
Joe,
who
sorry.
you could get before you pull it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you almost got to know, and that's the great thing about all the experience that they have in the room, right? When it comes to contacts on your phone in the NBA, there's no one on the planet who has more than Mavs CEO Rick Welts, right? And Masai Ujiri is right there, right? So anybody that they could or want to talk to was a call away, right? And I will say this about this new Mavs regime all of a sudden. Think about this, you guys. The hiring of Rick Welts, not a peep before it happened.
Yeah.
The hiring of Masai Ujiri, not a peep before it happened, right? Mm-hmm. And then this today, I mean, I don't know what time Shams put up his tweet, but I mean, 6:02, 6:03 was when, the Mavs sent out their press release. So it wasn't like Shams when he ruined
This wasn't Amazon
MVP on Sunday, right? It wasn't like that, So it's interesting the way that this group moves. And back to your point, Andrew, it's got a corporate feel to it. It's got a very buttoned up, secretive feel to it. And we're not necessarily, while we have big-time players who have all this NBA experience, from an absolute ownership standpoint, there might be a different way that they're going about it. And we'll see if it works. We'll see if it works. It hasn't started out very well, but we will see if it works.
Well, secretive hasn't exactly worked well for the Mavs in recent history,
No.
considering that one night in February.
Fateful.
But,
Saturday.
yeah,
Is that
I
the
mean-
30 for 30 one night in February?
I like it.
It should be.
One-
I just gave
uh,
him a title.
One late night in February.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
I mean,
All of us bring it up and just get lost in thought for a split second because it's trauma for all of us.
No. What it is
where I was that night.
too.
Did y'all go back to where you
Yeah.
were that night and what you were
Yes.
doing?
100%.
And that's what I do almost every time. You guys, I was literally.
I was gonna say, what was that like for you guys?
Oh my God! I was literally looking at my phone. I was sitting in my bed about to put my phone on the nightstand to go to bed early because I wanted to wake up early the next day. And how many hours later? I think I went to sleep like 30 hours later.
I was going to say, because you were on the plane to Cleveland.
I was on the plane to Cleveland after we did one of these instant
Yeah.
reactions on WFAA Plus.
Ditto. I was doom scrolling on my phone, laying in bed, and then 10 minutes later, on a Zoom thing with you guys, and yeah, pretty crazy.
I think part of it is why we kind of come back to that. It's not only because it was just such a massive moment in Mavs and NBA history, is the kid firing feels like the final,
Yeah.
Yeah.
stepping of grief. Because again, I don't expect Mavs ownership to change for a long time or for a while. So fans that are holding out for that, you might be holding out for longer than you want. But the closest you get is to getting rid of Nico Harrison and Jason Kidd. Whether Kidd was part of that trade or not doesn't really matter, because you go to the moment where Mavs fans felt like the knife started to get twisted in their gut after the trade was when they did the press conference hours after that Joe was at in Cleveland, right before the game. And it's them side by side and Kidd's, saying that I found out at the 11th hour, and yet they're doing the press conference together rather than it just being Nico. And Nico's giggling and laughing and cracking jokes, and maybe it was just nervous energy.
I'm
after
sure it
doing
was. I
something
mean,
so
he basically
insane.
said that they'll bury Jason and I by then. That was literally the quote from him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, I mean,
it was written. It was pre-written then. Like, unless you win in the next 2 years, you're probably gone. And what, right or wrong for Kidd specifically, it doesn't matter. It just feels like this move is going to let Mavs fans really fully come back around to this team, because there were a section of fans that felt like Kidd was a part of it, and until he's gone, that maybe they can't really move on the way they want to.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because we all remember at points of that press conference that was in Cleveland, it felt like Jason Kidd was a hostage.
Seriously,
it
100%.
felt like he was like, all right, how do I get out of this? And it was so poorly handled.
Yeah.
Right. And even a lot of the people who were, in charge of handling that situation from a PR standpoint, they're no longer in the organization either. So when you think about, clean sweeps and this ownership group trying to really create a new reality and Mavs 2.0 under the Adelsons and Dumonts, I mean, it begins to make a lot more sense from their standpoint. And from Jason's standpoint, perhaps it could be the best thing for him to get away from this saga, right? Because all he did was coach his butt off, and then he has to deal with, all these incredibly difficult things that happened afterward. So, mutually beneficial?
Probably.
That very well could be the case, right? Normally we're thinking, oh, well, the coach gets fired, and that's just how these things happen, and coach has got to go find a new job. Maybe this is good for you too, Jason. And like I said, I will be reaching out to him soon to get his thoughts.
I mean, wouldn't you have to say, he was in Brooklyn, he was in Milwaukee, but this was by far his most successful coaching stint. I mean, 2 conference finals, 1 appearance in the NBA finals, and then you could sort of write off the last 2 years as, well, that was out of my hands,
I mean, no, seriously. Like we talked about Kyrie kind of getting his image rehabilitated here in terms of his play, but Jason was kind of the same way. One of his big foibles was the spilling water thing. I think that was when he was with Brooklyn. So, he had a couple black marks on his resume coming in, and he rewrote how people remembered him in terms of elevating talent and bringing guys along. So, 100%. It was positive for him to be here. It just sucked that the injury bug kept biting this team at the worst possible time.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it just kept happening.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the whole thing with Kyrie, when he got hurt after you thought, you might have, AD and Kyrie together to at least get a look at it at that point in the season. I mean, it just...
Yeah. Well, I mean, Kyrie's the other part of this now, because at least going back to Ujiri's indirect press conference, the dichotomy between his answer on Jason Kidd and Kyrie was like night and day.
Yeah.
And I mean, it totally, like, we'll examine everything head to toe, and then Kyrie comes along. It's like, no, we want to see what that looks like. But Jonah, as we've kind of outlined a lot, like the draft capital issues over the next 5 years here offer a different solution where Kyrie's concerned.
Yeah, again, it goes back to what's the plan here? And I'd love to be a fly on the wall in these meetings. And, is it a 2 year? Is it a 3 year? Is it a 5 year? Like, what exactly is the game plan here? Because Kyrie's not getting any younger. And you're going to have to prepare for a Mavs core after Kyrie. And you can't wait to start building that. You have to start building it now, because you don't control your own pick until 2031. And so pick 9 has to be a home run. Pick 30 might have to be a home run if they really want to be contenders. But that's the NBA. But again, it kind of goes back to part of the reason why Masai was hired is that his, eye for talent and being able to identify guys in a draft, along with Mike Schmitz. And Mike Schmitz is a great talent evaluator as well. And that is going to have to be the reason they were hired is going to have to prove itself next month. I mean, that is not the pick, but the pick has to pan out. So we really can't judge them in June. We probably can't judge them a year from now. But 3 years from now, that'll be a good barometer for, where we stand with this new regime. But again, it goes back to this. Like, I don't think Kidd is a Phil Jackson level coach. He's not a guy that you absolutely have to keep. And if you need to do a little bit of damage control, if you want to start fully fresh, pull the plug on everything that happened before you got there, then firing Jason Kidd was the right move, and the Mavs are onto a new chapter.
Yeah, no, I agree. As difficult as it has been for Jason Kidd, the move makes sense. The timing, more than anything, makes sense. The draft prospects that you brought up, though, Jonah, are interesting, right? Because this new coach, and I do believe that there probably is already a plan in place, and they're just trying to figure out which coach they'll have to execute his plan. Because the great thing about Masai, and now that he's got Schmitz with him, he has shown this ability to find those gems who can fit in a particular system. And they may not be this overall player, but they've got specialties that can fit and work, and we'll just see what they need. Is it just a straight, flat-out shooter, right? Someone who may have liabilities in other ways, but if they can find a flat-out shooter and you put that kind of guy who can either be at the elbow extended behind 3 in the corner, and he's a knock-dead guy, do you grab a guy like that who would pair well with Cooper, right? Obviously, it'll depend on whoever the new head coach is, but that's the kind of thing that you expect from Masai, and especially now with the Schmitz with him. All right, you guys, we're going to close it down here, but as we go out the door, just your final thoughts on how this day unfolded and what it could mean moving forward for the Mavs.
I think in hindsight, Jason Kidd's place in the Mavs organization that's sealed in gold. I mean, as a player and as a coach, his legacy is set in terms of being a Dallas Maverick, and ultimately, new owners, new president, they want to put their own vision forward.
I mean, just to put a pin on that, his name's on the banner.
Yeah,
they literally have it written up there. So he doesn't have anything to worry about that as far as his state in the organization. It's kind of a weird mirror to Milwaukee in the sense of how things ended, where growing a young superstar but doesn't necessarily get to see the fruits of the labor. But a lot of that wasn't necessarily in his control to some degree. Jonah, what say you?
Yeah, I mean, listen, he was a part of the championship team and he's made multiple stints with the organization. But I feel like for a full generation of fans or any, generation of fans that were Luka fans, the Kidd legacy with the Mavs is always going to feel a little weird and a little tainted because of that trade. And just because he was one of the faces next to Nico at that press conference. And like that anybody that lived through that day and was distraught about that trade and whatever, probably is always going to feel that way to some degree. And, whether you can still appreciate, what Kidd accomplished, but, it's still not going to take away the fact that he was still part of that image that really hurt a lot of fans. And so I think it's a complicated goodbye for Jason Kidd and the Mavericks. But, based on his career, maybe he'll be back in 10 years. Who knows?
Well, listen, I'll just say to wrap it up, under multiple stints while he was here, Jason Kidd created excellence for the organization, right? Mm-hmm. And we will always have that issue, though, with the Luka Doncic trade. And that's why I can't wait for the 30 for 30 one night in February. We all can't wait. All right, you guys, thanks so much. Chris Lawrence, great stuff. Jonah Javad, always great. Our resident hoop head, Andrew Seeley, way to keep us together. I'm Joe Trahan. Thanks for joining us on this special edition of the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show.
Thanks for watching the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, sponsored by Blue Nail Roofing.
When your home is damaged by storms and high winds, you need more than a contractor. You need a consultant, advisor, and partner. Hi, I'm Eric Thomason, owner of Blue Nail Roofing. For over a decade, Blue Nail has been serving North Texas families and businesses. We're ready to restore your property with 100% satisfaction and for the amount of your insurance estimate. So call us today and make your next roof Blue Nail strong.